do now is, and I'll, in case any of you actually want to, you know, learn this process and copy this down and everything, I'll tell you the steps here. So, I've got all of my live line art, okay? I select everything, and I go Object, Expand Appearance, and that turns all of my live lines, so I'll back it up. This is a live line that can be moved and messed with. Once I go to Objects and Expand Appearance, it turns it into a shape. So it's no longer a live line, and it's just a shape. And so that means we can quickly add color to it. We can work with it in a different way that makes it easier to finalize. So next step after I have them all turned into shapes is to basically take it as a cookie cutter and flatten everything down. So I take this and I go to my Pathfinder and I go Divide. And so now where everything overlapped is all a completely separate piece.
Whoa.
So it gets very messy at first because now I have, you know, hundreds of shapes here. And so what I'm going to go in and do is just select all those extra shapes and get rid of them.
So smart.
So
I wish I knew that in school.
what exactly, right? And so a lot of these tricks are things that you just don't learn in school, and you don't, you know, this is like until you see it done professionally, you just don't know that it's a thing.
Yeah, for real.
You're also, when you do divide, it leaves you with all of these clear shapes. So I always come in here and I do select all to select all of those clear shapes that it cookie cutted out, and I just delete them. So I'm just going to go through here, the whole pose, and get rid of all these overlap things. And while I do that, I'm going to come back to the question, what was one of my favorite things? A lot of times it's just stylizations that kind of get passed on. You know, there was a Parks thing that years ago we did the ink and paint program, and we still see remnants of it in certain areas still. But for the most part, it's kind of run its course. And so we're looking at what could kind of be the next ink and paint sort of program, celebrate kind of the animation side of things. And so I did this one that was more drawn, definitely more like sketch thing, but it also still had color in it.
20 hours I spent on assignments just trying to make lines match up.
And I don't know if I could actually find, actually no, I
Just
just
always
have
night hours. Too many.
But it's usually stuff like that where it's kind of just a stylistic attempt at something that for what, you know, whatever reason, it's like they go with something a little bit safer a lot of times. Is, you know, we like, if I ever end up with something messy like this where the lines did not overlap correctly, I can just come in here and manually fix it. That.
I did a lot of.
So yeah, it's like, you know, it's a lot of times it's things don't get passed on because they don't like it. A lot of times product developers are excited about something, but they're looking at, you know, part of the game of being in kind of a big corporate behemoth like Disney is just the sales part of it. And so you have to play the game of making sure that it's going to be viable to be out there on shelves, and it's not just kind of a you know, art for art's sake, you know, sort of thing. So But it always also, you know, it inspires kind of the next thing, or maybe it comes back around for, it wasn't right for this, but it maybe is right for this, and so kind of as I'm talking about it, it did eventually sort of translate into something that I've been working on for Princess now.
There's a
We're doing
costume
like a
series.
heritage guide for Princess, where it's very
Yeah,
model
like princess,
sheets,
or different prince, or different princes,
inspired,
maybe Minnie in the
and,
costume or something.
It shows the actual animation art of
Mention
the
that, it's a good one.
princesses.
Ooh, what would be a team for that? What's the princess lead right now
and
for
so
character art?
Okay, so I went through and got rid of all those extra lines, just a couple. And so in a perfect world, again, this would be a little bit cleaner still. You know, everything's a little bit rushed and haphazard here, but you know, if you imagine the same thing happening over here, where it's all very, very clean, very tight, you get those extra details that we took the time to kind of solidify and make sure everything's going. So the next step for here, I have all these are all still individual pieces that were cookie cuttered out, right? So now that I have it all cleaned up and I have this kind of final line, I'm going to select all of it again, and then unite. Under Pathfinder, I do unite, and so here I'll zoom in here, and you can see all the different you know, shapes there. I do unite, and it makes it all one shape. So everything here, unless it's floating off in its own space,
You can solidify it.
is all
Chunk and color.
one selectable big shape. Okay? So once I have it all cleaned up and is one solid shape, I have to create my color shapes on top of it. So there are a few different ways to do this. The way that we normally do this is we create a silhouette of the character in the back, and then colored shapes on top. So I'll show you what that looks like. I come in here on my finished thing, and I select just the very outer edge of the character, and I copy and paste to create a full silhouette of it. So I have this one silhouette shape of me. I'm going to hide that for a second. And now I'm going to select all of my shapes here. And then I deselect the outer edge, so that now I have everything selected except that silhouette. And so now when I copy and paste, I have all of the shapes, and I'm going to turn them white. I have all the shapes, and then I have to exclude the ones that were floating. And so what I'm left with, I'm going to hide what I started with. This is the shape we just started with here. So I have my silhouette, and then on top of it, I have each of those individual shapes as usable pieces.
Yeah. Ooh, there's a color there in the middle.
Okay?
Yep.
So, and that's the part, it certainly when I first saw that blew my mind as well. So
I expect
and
it.
so that's exactly what this is
I
the
mean, it
background
makes sense
is
for-
the silhouette,
But it makes sense.
and each individual shape is its own color.
But I love it.
That's cool.
So now, all it is just a matter of eyedropping your color into these shapes.
Everything else is coming to life, y'all.
So you
That's beautiful.
first select just the outer edge of your finalized, cleaned up art. You copy and paste it so that you have
This is our class logo, y'all.
kind of just the one solid silhouette. So you have your silhouette, you hide it for a second so that you can go back to your original. You select everything except the outer edge. So you select everything and then deselect the outer edge. So that way, basically, you've selected all of those interior vector shapes, so that when you copy paste, it creates those vector shapes on top. And so you're left with these shapes, and when you put the silhouette behind it, you're left with, you know, the silhouette underneath. So once you eye drop everything in here, you've got your more or less finished art, but we're not quite there yet on what we call kind of a finished piece of art. There are some programs where this would be our final step and we would call it done here. But you'll notice here that the line art itself is also colored. So if you think back to, you know, the 30s, 40s, the classics, the ink and paint team would use separate color inks on that stuff, and you know, they would have the Snow White's skirt outlined in dark yellow, and then they paint it in the brighter yellow. And so it just gives that kind of more professional, nice looking touch. And so in order to achieve that is kind of next level stuff. And I'll kind of do my best to do a quick version of that. But basically you use a ton of clipping masks to clip the color into the silhouette behind the shapes. So first I'm going to grab my dark red, and I'm going to start with that as kind of a starting point. But then, of course, the hat is not dark red line work. The hat is this dark blue line. So what I'm going to do is create a new shape. And I'm just creating a wholly new, you know, brand new shape here. I'm going to get rid of the color for a second so that we can see what I'm doing. Around just the part that I want to have that dark blue line on. So I come in here where it connects to the spots that I don't want to be dark blue. And I carefully kind of basically cut out the parts that I want. Okay, so I have a full shape that's all the way around the sorcerer's hat. I'm going to turn that into this dark blue color. So I have this really ugly dark blue shape over top, right? But so what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy that and get rid of it. I'm going to go into my silhouette itself, okay? So this is just in the silhouette. I'm going to paste it here. And then I'm going to use the silhouette as a clipping mask. Clip it into the silhouette so that it's not so ugly. And that way when I go back out and I have my shapes on top, I'm left with line art that is nice and clean and dark blue. So for Mickey, specifically, this one, the moon too. So all of this deco on his hat, they use the same color as the paint, as the ink. So I come in here to my clipping mask where I have my ugly color shapes. I put that in there, and so that's just behind, and so I'm left with nice clean line art on motion. And so I would go all the way down and basically do the same thing and see that you know, the skin and kind of the actual body parts of Mickey are this kind of dark gray color. So I would do the same thing here. I don't know if I'll kind of have time to do the whole entire thing, but you guys can start kind of get the idea. And this is definitely something that it takes practice and experience to kind of understand the layering that's happening here. Because it gets very messy. And, you know, a final vector file can be pretty scary depending on how detailed you get. So, I'll do a quick version here. Let's do the two hands and the feet. Actually, not the feet, just the legs.
That got work.
Okay, so I have all these gray shapes, and I'll do the same thing. Bring them into
Stylish mittens.
my clipping mask. Push it behind that gap. And that way now I have all of this kind of separated, cleaned up, and colored the way I want it. And so if you kind of take what we've done here, kind of the quick, messy version of that, and take your time doing it, you end up with a file that looks like this. And so you've got the shapes behind, same deal. I've got these clipping masks for the ink line behind it. And you end up with a finished piece of vector art.
Now, was this all stuff I'm assuming that you learned just on the job being here, or had you worked with it prior, or?
Vector art is something that when I interviewed, they said, "Do you know vector art?" And I said, "Yes," and I had not touched it. It was definitely a learning on the job situation for me. I think that's a very common thing because vector art is just not something that is taught in school a whole lot unless it's unless you're more kind of graphic design based. It's not kind of the way that we can use it and wrangle it for character art. You know, it was not built as a character art tool. But you know, we use it in these tricky, complicated ways so that we can have a more usable file. But yeah, it's definitely common for you know, especially younger artists come in without any vector experience or very little, like they've kind of played with it on their own.
Yeah.
But the actual techniques of like learning these intricate, like the actual buttons to press and everything, just comes with time and experience and everything.
Yeah, because my major is, I was a, my school called it web design and digital media, but it
Yeah.
had a very heavy focus in Illustrator and Photoshop.
Uh-huh.
So I was kind of wondering also, like, what would my next step be for that? Like, I have a good knowledge of a student level of it, but now I'm learning there's a lot more. So what would you recommend the next
Yeah.
good kind of step for somebody looking to learn it more deeply?
Right, yeah, it's tricky because no matter what you do, honestly, there's so much that comes from learning on the job.